December 12th, 1997 is a day that will live with me forever. It was an unseasonably warm winter day in Chicago, and I had just concluded an outstanding week of high school. I couldn't wait to get home and start the weekend. But as my buddy pulled into the driveway, I saw my father's car, and my mood switched instantly. See, normally, when my father beat me home from work, I had done something to deserve it. But as I racked my brain, it became pretty clear to me I had done nothing to rise to that level of trouble. And that's when my heart sank. I started to think about my mother. My mom had had 7 heart surgeries by the time I was 17 years old, and I just knew something had happened to her. There were 40 steps between my buddy's car and the front door, but it seemed like an eternity, with each step thinking worse and worse thoughts. As I got up to the door and went to turn the knob, it opened before I got there, and I looked up and I saw my father. And I'm not sure if I had ever seen my father cry before, but I was certain I had never seen him cry like this. I looked up and I said, "Mom?" And he said, "No, buddy, you are really sick." And the next hours and days and weeks and months were a blur as I underwent seemingly hundreds of tests, treatments, and therapies in my first battle against cancer. And while I wouldn't wish the journey that I went through on my worst enemy, I wouldn't take it back either, because there are so many lessons and silver linings for me to pull from that experience. The first silver lining is this: that challenge brought me to my profession. I am an educator, and I have the best job in the world. On any given day, my actions can change the trajectory of a kid's life. That is an amazing opportunity, but also an awesome responsibility. And I'm an educator because of one man, Ron Sawin. Mr. Sawin was my advanced math teacher. And as my treatments intensified and my condition worsened, all I wanted to do was throw in that white flag on advanced math. And he wouldn't let me. He never let me give up on myself. He'd show up at my house when I asked for help. He'd show up at my house when I didn't ask for help. And he pulled me through that course. He changed the trajectory of my life, and I was hooked. The second silver lining is this: I had the opportunity to view the medical field up close. And so now I have the ability to juxtapose what's happening in the medical field, the field that saved my life, and in the education field, the field of which I have dedicated my life. I am continually impressed with what happens in the medical field. They're agile, they listen to feedback, they act on their data, and they constantly are working together to do what's best on behalf of their patients. In the education field, sometimes we struggle to coordinate a unit between social studies and English when the teachers are next door to each other down the hall. But there is one thing that brings the medical field and education together, and that is crisis. It feels like when the sky is falling down all around us, that society realizes we really need high-quality education and high-quality healthcare. This was true during the COVID-19 pandemic. A light shined on both industries. There was praise, there was criticism. But as months wore on, it was pretty clear the medical industry continued to adapt and overcome. And education was not taking the same advantage of the opportunity. If you ask educators what it's like right now to be an educator, they will tell you that they are underappreciated, under-resourced, and underpaid, all while being overworked, vilified in the media, and political punching bags. And the data supports this too. There's over 100,000 positions annually that go unfilled or filled by underqualified applicants. And now, as a result of the pandemic, we have more students being homeschooled and private schooled than ever before. In business terms, we're losing some of our market share. So as educators, we have to make a choice and have to make that choice quickly. We either blame politicians and blame the system, complain about our circumstances and our lack of resources, and defend our somewhat stubborn adherence to the status quo, or we lead an education evolution. To evolve, we have to shed the parts of our process we no longer need, keep those that are making us successful, and continue to adapt to be successful in our future. But when I say we, I want to be very clear about who I'm talking about. This is every teacher, every principal, and every district leader. But more importantly, it is every parent, private citizen, private industry, and our politicians as well. Because if you believe like I believe that education has to change quickly, comprehensively, and permanently, it is going to take all of us. But I do believe there is a path forward. I believe if we focus on 3 things, that we can move education forward into the future. One is interdependence. The second is we have to rethink partnerships in the education sphere. And 3, we must increase our rate of change. So let's talk about interdependence. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw the medical field unite as one entity against one common invisible entity. The communication wasn't just department to department or hospital to hospital. It was across medical systems, across countries, across continents. And I wish I could say that same type of cooperation and collaboration happened in education. But ironically, in a non-for-profit industry, we tend to be dominated by competition more than collaboration. I'm going to fake a phone call here, and my educators that are watching, just think about how weird this sounds. And parents, the same thing. Could you imagine getting a phone call like this? Yes, Mrs. Davis, your daughter has done an amazing job this year. We want to put her into advanced physics next year. But we don't offer advanced physics. So we're going to make sure she has access to the neighboring district's Mr. Turner. He's a nationally acclaimed teacher. We'll either bus her there or stream his lessons in, but either way, we'll get her access to that instruction. That sounds completely nonsensical, but it doesn't have to be that way. See, the result of us being in competition instead of collaboration with other districts and other schools is this. 2 children born 60 miles apart at the same time will have dramatically different educational experiences. And what's worse is that this perpetuates inequity, because when those 2 students are born, one to an affluent area and one to an area that socioeconomically struggles, which one do you think gets the better educational experience? And this isn't just 60 miles. This can be 6 miles or 6 blocks in our urban center. As I stand here on this red dot right now, if you drew a 5-mile radius, one of the top performing schools in the country is in that radius. But within that same radius, there's a school that doesn't graduate 60% of its kids. This is just unfair, and it's depressingly avoidable. I'm proud of the work we're doing in our district to seek interdependence. We're working with several other rural districts in the state of Illinois, spearheaded with help from the University of Illinois at Champaign, to put state-of-the-art streaming equipment into our classrooms. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that geography need not limit access. So when I have an AP US history teacher that's literally writing the textbook for the course, now other students throughout the state can access that. And vice versa for when they have amazing instructors doing things that I cannot provide. This is interdependence. This is cooperation. This is the future of education. Besides interdependence, we need to talk about partnerships. And I'm going to say a word that many educators, I'm going to send a chill down your spine, but stay with me. We need to amplify private influence in public education. This is not the privatization of public education, but private influence. The reason is simple. When I have the privilege of talking to educators throughout the country, and I say, what could we do to better serve our kids that are headed toward career path? So not our college kids, our career pathway kids, what could we do? The answers generally all sound the same. We need more expertise in those fields, we need a lot more resources and tools of the day, and we need more money. Well, that's great. If we can all identify the problem, that's step 1. But the issue is this, what's the plan? What school, what district has taxpayers lining up to give more money to them? Are our politicians fighting to find funding for us? So at some point, we have to do something on our own. And several districts are doing this, finding private partners. There's wonderful work going on in Kalamazoo, Michigan, Rockford, Illinois, Akron, Ohio. And I'm proud of the work that we're doing in our district too. See, in our area, in our geographic region of the state, there's a need for welders. Welders earn a livable wage. So as a high school, if I can send skilled labor to that job sector, I'm doing both the community a favor and my students. The issue is this, even if I carve out the space in a schedule to offer a class like welding, and if I have the physical space to do so, and if I can find a qualified teacher, which is way harder than you might think, then I still have to keep the tools of the day in the hands of the students. And so even if I somehow have the money, which schools don't, to put the tools of the day, whether it be in welding or automotives or other class you want to use as an example, the iterative cycle of change is going to happen so quickly that we won't be able to keep up. And soon we'll be training our students with obsolete tools, leaving the training relatively useless. We cannot be successful without private partners, without private expertise, and without private resources. And like I said, this is happening in pockets. It's happening in silos. But there's no structure and there's no systematicity to it. But what if the federal government got involved? See, one of the reasons that private entities donate to schools is that it's a tax write-off. It's a charitable contribution. But what if that was changed to say, you know what, private industry, if you help support public school, we'll give you 3 times the monetary value of your donation. And if you're going to donate to a school that serves typically underserved kids or does not have industry in their background, we'll make it 5x or 6x. Can you imagine the influx of expertise and resources and skilled labor that's necessary in our communities? There is a path forward. We just have to continue to look for it. But even if we have amazing partnerships, and even if districts are working together and seeking interdependency, nothing matters unless we increase our rate of change. The favorite example that I love to talk about when it comes to rate of change in schools is coding. Coding and computer science are excellent courses. But coding became a booming industry and employment sector in the 90s. If you could code, there's a lucrative end for you. As such, schools tried to accommodate. We now sit here 3 decades later, 3 decades, and 20% of American public schools have a coding or computer science class, and they're still considered innovative. Here's the problem. The employment sector is now declining. Industry can outsource that to foreign countries for lower wages. We missed an entire 3-decade window. But it's not just coding. We're really slow to respond to external customer feedback. We don't like to look at data that doesn't fit our pre-existing narratives, and we are glacially slow at responding to societal trends. What's the most embarrassing is that we don't even change when it comes to our own peer-reviewed education research. If that was the case, we'd already have later start times for our adolescent kids. There'd be no homework for our early elementary kids. We'd focus a lot more on the social and emotional health of our students before worrying about test scores. And we'd have completely abandoned traditional discipline procedures. This list could go on and on and on. But as a result of us not changing, school looks an awful lot like it did 20 years ago. Heck, maybe even 40, maybe even 60 years ago. And the problem is when school does not reflect society, school is dangerously close to becoming irrelevant. And this too is personal for me. I share with you a story about my first journey with cancer at the beginning of the talk. If I was diagnosed just 10 years prior, my chance at survival would have been 16% less. So quite literally, if medicine changed at the rate of education, I might not be here. So unless educators start to believe, and I do believe, that we can change the lives of kids and we can save lives of kids, and we start changing quickly in order to do so, I think we might be in some serious trouble. So I've been really frank with all of you. I think American public education is in a really tenuous spot. But that doesn't mean that I am not full of hope and belief, because I am. I have hope that we will seek interdependency. I have hope that we will rethink private partnerships in public education, and I have hope that we will increase our rate of change. And that hope is fueled by belief. I believe in the educators that I work with, in my district, in my state, and across the country. I believe in their commitment, their dedication, and their passion. But the bottom line is, we must do better. We can do better. We will do better. Thank you.